Jai Hind, Namaste, hello, and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav, and in this video, we'll be discussing the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 30th of October 2020. Now, for your convenience, I have added timestamps in the description. So, if you want to skip to a particular news, please use those timestamps. Also, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. And please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. And free PDF for selected topics are available on our Telegram channel, the link to which is in the description. So without wasting your time, let's get started. So beginning with the Hindu, 3 killed in French church attack. So it seems the problems are getting worse and worse in Europe because of the influx of refugees. Now they are seeing the aftermath because, like I discussed with you yesterday as well, whenever the refugees are entering into any country, they should follow the rules and laws of those countries, but they are not ready to do so. So it is like a clash of civilizations. Especially we discussed the French idea of secularism yesterday, Laicite, where the state and religion are completely divorced from each other in the public sphere. So these people, the refugees, they're not ready to accept the French laws, and this is leading to friction within the French society. So a knife-wielding attacker shouting Allahu Akbar beheaded a woman and killed 2 other people at a church in French city of Nice. Prime Minister Jacques Attacks raised France's security alert to its highest level and said the government's response would be firm. Enough is enough. It is time for France to exonerate itself from the laws of peace in order to definitely wipe out Islamofascism from our territory. So he has termed it Islamofascism. The assailant is believed to be a 21-year-old Tunisian national who recently entered France from Italy. Again, what is the point of migrating to some other country when you're not ready to follow their rules? You're trying to convert France and Europe into the region from which you ran off from. So what is the point? Then lowest core sector shrinking since March. So the core sector, it shrank just 0.8% in September on a year-on-year basis, recording the lowest contraction since March 2020. So it is again a positive sign for green offshoots in the economy. Now the coal production rose for the second month in a row. Now again, very important for your PT, what are the core sector industries? There are 8 core sector industries for Indian economy: coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizers, cement, steel, and electricity. So you can divide them into energy and infrastructure. For energy, you have coal, crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. And for infrastructure, you can add refinery products, fertilizers, steel, and cement. So you can divide it like that. So in all, there are 8. Then what is the importance of this core sector? It has major impact on general economic activities and also industrial activities. Significantly impact most other industries as well. If you remember, I have discussed with you how government invests in the infrastructure sector, and that leads to fillip in the core industries or the core sectors, and that has an overall multiplying effect on the economy. It represents the capital base of the economy. These 8 industries have a combined share of above 40% in the Index of Industrial Production, IIP. So let us see what is this IIP. Now, IIP is an index that shows the growth rates in different industry groups of the economy in a fixed period of time. It is compiled and published monthly. Please pay attention again for your PT. Compiled and published monthly by NSO MOSPI. If you remember, earlier there were 2 institutions, NSSO and CSO. Now they have been merged into one. NSO MOSPI is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. The base year for IIP calculations is 2011-12. Now, what is the significance of this IIP? It is a measure of physical volume of production used by government agencies for policy making purposes and is extremely relevant for calculation of quarterly and advanced GDP estimates. So again, we are seeing green shoots in the economy, and please keep in mind what is core sector and what is IIP, right? And questions like who compiles and who publishes, they are typical questions. So please pay attention to them, including the base. PLA upgrading troops quarters ahead of winter. So this is what they are saying, insulated quarters and whatnot, but these people are liars. There were videos earlier where they were showing drones delivering hot cooked meals to the troops, but those are all propaganda videos, and everything that this Chinese state say, it is propaganda. So if you want to read it, but take it with a bucket of salt. Then Centre sets up commission to tackle NCR pollution. This is important. So let us look at it. So Center has constituted a permanent body, Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR and adjoining areas. This will be replacing the 22-year-old EPCA. This was formed in the aftermath of the Mehta case. Very, very important case, Mehta case. I've told you earlier as well, right? Now this EPCA, it did not have any legislative backing because it was formed on the basis of Supreme Court orders, right? Now this new body, it has legislative backing, and Center has come out with an ordinance to notify this body. Now what is ordinance? Ordinance is covered under Article 123 of the Constitution. Which article? 123. Ordinance is a very typical question for UPSC. So ordinances are issued when the parliament is not in session and the government feels that there is an urgent piece of legislation. So they come out with ordinances, but these ordinances have to be ratified by the parliament when it reconvenes. The maximum period for which an ordinance can stay without the ratification by parliament is 6 months plus 6 weeks, right? So that makes it 7.5 months maximum till which an ordinance can stay without the ratification by parliament. Until the time it is in order, it has all the powers and all the effects of a parliamentary legislation, right? So this is a brief introduction to the concept of our ordinance as well. Now getting back to this. Now this will be an all-powerful body. It will assume several powers to coordinate action among states, levy fines ranging up to 1 crore or 5 years in prison to address air pollution. So EPCA has been dissolved and this has been made a very powerful body. Now what are the areas covered? NCR and Delhi, Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. So basically Delhi and adjoining areas plus the state of Punjab and Rajasthan. Now the composition, the panel will have at least 6 permanent members and will be headed by a former or incumbent secretary to the central government or a chief secretary to a state government. It will have members from ministries as well as representatives from states. So states have a problem that states have got less representation in this body. Now powers to implement. Basically, it is the CPCB and its state branches that have the power to implement provisions of the Environment Protection Act for air, water and land pollution. But now when it comes to air pollution, the orders of this new body will be supreme and they will override the orders of CPCB as well. So in case of a dispute or a clash of jurisdiction, the commission's writ will prevail specific to matters concerning only air pollution. The commission will be empowered to constitute a special investigative group for stricter implementation. So this is about this new body. In today's paper, we'll be discussing more about this problem of pollution in the NCR region. Now page 6 editorial. The India-US defense partnership is deepening. So this editorial is by Mr. Rakesh Sood. He's a former diplomat. He has a very good grip on these issues. Plus he does not give his nonsense opinions. So that is why we'll be discussing this. So let us see. Now basically in this, he is tracing the evolution of Indo-US defense partnership since the end of Cold War till present, right? So let's see. So he says that the relations really took off post Cold War because what happened till Cold War, we were more or less thought to be aligned with the USSR, and US and USSR were rivals and competitors. They were the opposing sides of the Cold War. So we could not have close relations with the US till then, and US was sponsoring Pakistan. US had its own calculations. Now, after the dismantling of the USSR, India and US relations took a reset. So it all started in 1991 with kick-lighter proposals that suggested establishing contacts between the three services to promote exchange and explore cooperation. Then they agreed on defense cooperation and it was concluded in 1995. It instituted a dialogue at defense secretary level together with setting up of a technology group. But then he says the overhang of nuclear issue continued to cast a shadow on the talks because both sides had little appreciation of each other's threat perceptions, and the differences came to a head when India conducted the nuclear tests in 1998. The US responded angrily and it imposed a slew of economic sanctions, and it also led an international condemnation campaign against India. We have discussed this earlier as well, where there was an article by Mr. Sham Saran, right? This was the Bill Clinton administration. Then things changed when Mr. Bush took over, if you remember. Then shifting perceptions. Now there was intensive engagement and 18 rounds of talks between the foreign ministers, and it spanned over 2 years, and that led to a shift in perception. Sanctions were gradually lifted in 2005. A 10-year framework for defense relationship was established, and a joint declaration on defense cooperation was also signed in 2013. And in 2015, we renewed this framework for defense cooperation for another 10 years. Now, what does this entail, this framework for defense cooperation? Joint exercises, intelligence exchanges, joint training, technology transfer, and sharing of non-proliferation best practices. Now, the initial movement was slow. UPA won, right? It gathered momentum once the nuclear hurdle was overcome in 2008 with the India-US civil nuclear deal, because UPA 1 had the left parties as its allies, and they are in principle against any kind of deal with the US. So then the Prime Minister, he took a very huge risk. This deal came to be known as 1-2-3 deal. And after that, the left parties, they withdrew support. But then UPA again came to power. The framework agreement was renewed in 2015 for another decade. Now he says there were other factors at play too. For example, because of progressive opening of Indian economy, there was increase in bilateral trade in goods and services. Then the Indian diaspora, it has become very vocal and politically sensitive and active in the US. So they also had a role to play. And there was also a huge jump in defense contracts, which were till 2005 only 400 million. And since then they have jumped to 18 billion. So within 15 years from 400 million to 18 billion. Now there's a bipartisan consensus both within India and in US. In India also, both Congress and BJP, they are largely in favor of a close relationship with the US. And also in the US, both the Democrats and the Republicans, they are in favor of a close relationship with India. So this is what he's telling us. Now he says the things changed with the biggest push coming from Prime Minister Modi. He overcame the hesitations of history and taking forward the relationship. First, with the Democratic Obama administration, there was a signing of joint strategic vision for Asia Pacific and Indian Ocean region in 2015. So Obama, he was responsible for this policy of pivot to Asia. The US focus changes from West Asia to the Indian Ocean region, and more importantly to Indo-Pacific. That was Obama's legacy. Now this was followed by elevating the India-US strategic and commercial dialogue into a 2+2 dialogue, which recently happened. Defense and foreign ministers and their counterparts from both the countries, they meet, and it was upgraded in 2018 under the Republican Trump administration. Now he's also talking about the foundational agreements. BECA was the last one. The first one was General Security of Military Information Agreement, GSOMIA, relating to security of each other's military information. That was signed in 2002. So from 2002 to 2020, a whole 18 years it took us to conclude all these foundational agreements. The UPA, it signed the end-use monitoring agreement, but it was hesitant and the pace was slow. Nearly 60 countries have signed BECA with the US. 2016, LEMOA, I've already told you. Then COMCASA in 2018. You can read these in the PDFs because I have explained them time and time again. Now, more than 100 countries have signed these agreements with the US equivalent agreements on logistics and mutual security of military communication have also been signed with France, but without any political fuss. Why is there a political fuss in India when we sign with the US such agreements? Because of the left parties. Even now, when we were conducting this 2+2 and BECA, these left parties, unnecessarily, they will always stand against US. I mean, there's no problem with it, but you should give a proper reason for anything. Marx was great, I agree. But these people, they are far divorced from the ideology of Marx. I'm sorry to say that. The left in India is ideologically bankrupt. Now, working together is a habit, and developing that habit is a long process of building mutual respect and trust while accepting differences. Now, India always engages with any other country as equal partner, and this has been a learning experience for both. US categorized India as a major defense partner in 2016, a position unique to India, which was formalized in the National Defense Authorization Act 2017, which authorized the Secretaries of State and Defense to take necessary measures so that they could act swiftly in 2+2, which started in 2018, right? It has also helped India to join the export control regime. So one day I'll be telling you about these regimes. Basically, Australia Group, MTCI and Wassenaar Agreement, they deal with the control of export of weapons, right? Weapons technology. and has also practices consistent with the NSG. Now, NSG is Nuclear Supply Group. We need membership of this group because we need nuclear material for a civil program. But China always blocks our membership, saying that if you give membership to India, you should also give membership to Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has the worst record when it comes to nuclear proliferation, and India has a stellar record when it comes to nuclear security and keeping the secrets with us. But then China is China, and China's illegitimate child, Pakistan, right? In 2018, India was placed in Category 1 of Strategic Trade Authorization, which eased the exports of sensitive technology. So see, US is paying attention. First, they made the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a unique position for India. Then they put India in Category 1 of Strategic Trade Authorization. Now see, there are two reasons behind it. Number one, India needs defense exports, right? So US is ready to supply them. It will give fillip to US economy. And number two, US is trying to empower India to act as a pivot against China. This has been their strategy since the time of Obama. So Trump is not doing anything new, but he is just cementing what Obama had started, right? This is the rare instance when Trump is following the policy of Obama. In other places, you will see he has undone all the legacies of Obama. Now he says in every relationship, there's a push and pull and it matures later on. Same he's saying about Quad. It was mooted in 2017, but it went cold. Now it has regained its vigor. And India was also invited for the first time to attend the Five Eyes, which is a signals intelligence grouping set up in 1941, consisting of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and US. So again, they are engaging more and more with India. Now breaking away with labels. Now it is a very important thing. He's saying that India has been bogged down by labels. Earlier in the Nehru era, we had the label of non-alignment that basically stopped us from taking many decisions, pragmatic decisions that could have helped India in a big way. But we also diverted from this because during the height of the Cold War, we signed a treaty of peace, friendship and cooperation with the USSR. Now we had our own domestic compulsions and threat from China and Pakistan, which led us to sign this treaty. Now he says during 70s and 80s, our foreign policy was hijacked by non-aligned movement, tying up policy in ideological knots. So now he says that our strategic community needs to appreciate that policies cannot become prisoners of labels. So this is all that he's saying. Again, a very good editorial. You can save this because the history and the evolution of India-US defense cooperation, it will remain the same. So you can only add new things to that. Now this one, gaps in learning. So yesterday we discussed the Acer report, right? Now these people, they have the habit of crying over a report 10 or 20 times. So this is again a crying like that only. You can read it. It is in the PDF, right? Then this one, is the US on the wane as a superpower? Now I would suggest you to read it yourself. And if you're not able to understand it, then ask me because this is such a huge editorial. And even if I get into it, it will be mostly like reading it out rather than explaining anything. So you read it. If you're not able to understand it, you can always reach me on my Instagram channel or you can make comments. And if you guys don't understand it, I promise I will cover it in the next video, right? Then this one, less pollution, more soil fertility. So I think we've already discussed stubble burning for 5-6 times. Now again, it is about that. So we'll quickly look at it, right? So first he says that the green revolution increased greatly rice and wheat production, which simultaneously increased stubble post-harvest. The popular combined harvesting techniques that were used were not efficacious and machines left behind 1 foot tall stalks. They had to be burned. We've also discussed that these rice, especially these rice stalks, which are not of basmati variety, they are high in silica. So they can't even be used as a fodder. So that is why they had to be burned. And then there are many legislative situations and also some unique climatological or meteorological situations that lead to this problem. What is the legislative situation? To conserve the underground water, Punjab government had put a ban on cultivation of new crop for some time. That pushes back the period for sowing new crop, right? So in effect, farmers only have 20 to 25 days before harvesting a previous crop and sowing a new one. So to deal with that, they indulge in stubble burning, right? So this prompted stubble burning as a low cost and speedy solution due to limited time period of 20 to 25 days. Then it has an environmental impact. Harmful gases like nitrogen oxide and carbon monoxide. And the TERI report said that in 2019, air pollution in NCR was 20 times higher the safe threshold by WHO. And we've also discussed the SOGA report, if you remember, right? Highest exposure to PM 2.5, right? And third highest to ground level ozone in India, especially in the NCR region. It also has deleterious impacts on soil fertility. Why? Because it destroys organic fertilizers, the friendly insects that are present in the soil, right? And it reduces groundwater levels by reducing soil moisture. Now, this is more dangerous during pandemic because it can make lungs weaker and people more susceptible to the disease. It could also impact the recovering from infection. Now, what are the legislative measures to check it? 2013, stubble burning was banned by Punjab. 2015, NGT imposed a ban on stubble burning in Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and Punjab, and directed government to assist farmers by obtaining equipment like happy seeders and rotavator. Then stubble burning is also an offense under section 188 of IPC and Air Prevention and Control Pollution Act of 1981. The union government has brought an ordinance. We've already discussed this. Then a new revolution. So till now, the action plan of Punjab and Haryana seem to be setting up custom hiring centers which will help farmers in hiring machinery such as happy seeder, rotavator, paddy straw, etc. on rent, along with supply of more balers. Now this is important. As per a study by International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, application of happy seeders and super SMS machines can improve agricultural productivity by 10 to 15%, reducing labor costs and allowing the soil to become more fertile. So you should remember this application of happy seeders and super SMS machines, study by International Maize and Wheat Improvement Centers. Now the Pusa decomposer that the union government is using, we've already discussed it many times, is a set of 4 tablets made by extracting fungi strains that help the paddy straw to decompose at a much faster rate than usual. How does it happen? Farmers first they shred the straw, then spray a solution containing fungal strain and mix it with soil for decomposition, and this takes around 20 to 25 days. So this is a perfect solution. Now this has the potential to reduce air pollution and increase soil fertility. So this is about this one. Then on page 9, Yashwardhan likely to be the next CIC. So we have already discussed about CIC so many times because 2020 marks the 15 years of the RTI Act, right? And 10 years of NGT. So you should be well versed with these topics. So the DOPT came out with vacancies. Government conducted interviews. Now the CIC is a Chief Information Commissioner that is selected by a panel comprising of 3 people. Who are those 3 people? The Prime Minister of India, the Union Home Minister, and Leader of Opposition. Now there is no Leader of Opposition, so we changed the rules to actually give space to Congress by changing it to saying that Leader of the single largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. So as expected, Mr. Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, he has given a decent note. So let's not get into it. What all do we know till now? That the post of CIC has been vacant since August, right? And we read in that article that how since 2014 the seats in CIC have not been filled without court's orders. So this is what this is saying. Let him get appointed officially, then we'll again look at it, right? Now he's a former diplomat and he's currently a member of Central Information Commission. Then page 10, LAC situation critical, former MP. So why I'm not getting into it? Because it is an MP, he's a former MP and he's saying his local sources. Unless there is an official communication by Government of India, we really can't get into it because this is more like speculation. Maybe I'm not saying that he's lying, but till the time Government of India does not give an official position, we shouldn't really be getting into it. If you want, you can read it. It's a good read. Then Abhinandan release for peace, says Pakistan. So what happened? A prominent leader of opposition in the Pakistani parliament, he made the statement that Pakistan released Abhinandan under threat, that the foreign minister, he pleaded with the opposition members that please release him or India would be attacking at 9 p.m. tonight. So he says that the army chief was also scared, the prime minister did not show up. So now you know these Pakistani people, especially the Imran Khan government, all of them are druggies. So now they are saying that we released Abhinandan for peace, but that is not the case. they were actually scared, right? And they have also accepted to their role in the Pulwama blasts. Then amid Shringla's France visit, India flails attacks in Nice. So he is on a visit to many countries, including France. So India has strongly condemned the attacks on Nice, right? Then India upset by Kashmir depiction in Saudi note. So these people, they just can't keep to themselves. So Saudi has been appointed as the chair of G20 in 2020. So to commemorate that, they came out with a note or a currency note. Now that has a map, and on that map they have shown Kashmir as an independent territory, neither belonging to India nor to Pakistan. Let us see. So this is the 20 Riyal note, and see they have done this. Now Kashmir neither belongs to India nor Pakistan, right? These people are really funny. Anyways, so the 20 Riyal note printed by Saudi Arabia Monetary Authority to celebrate Saudi presidency of G20. This map shows Kashmir as separate entity between India and Pakistan. The map also appears Gilgit-Baltistan and POK out of Pakistani control. India describes it as gross misrepresentation of sovereign territory. So these people, they can't handle their own domestic affairs, but they are more interested in international affairs. Again, this could be a move by Saudi to counter the rising Turkey. Who knows? But who really cares about what they think, right? And now what is G20? So basically it is a grouping for economic cooperation. It is 19 countries plus EU. They come together and they discuss on international economic affairs, and this 19 countries, they basically are the developed countries and the developing countries, emerging economies, right? So they come together and they discuss or deliberate on international economic affairs, that is G20, right? Then Supreme Court gives time on permanent commission. So in March, Supreme Court came out with the judgment which upheld the right of women naval officers to be considered for permanent commission. Now, Government of India said that because of this pandemic, we need some more time for preparations. So Supreme Court has given them time till December 31 because there are many preparations that have to be done on the administrative side and also on the operational side. So that is why it takes time for implementation of orders. Then page 13, world. What is behind the spat between Turkey and France? Ties hit a new low after Paris defended Prophet's cartoons. So this person, Erdogan, you know, he's crazy, right? So he's picking up fights everywhere. So the background, we know what all has happened till now in France vis-a-vis Islam, right? So France is bringing out a new law, and Macron made a speech before these attacks. In early October, he outlined the substance of a long-awaited law which his government is planning to introduce to regulate practice of Islam in France. And it is very, very important, like I told you yesterday as well, that there are parts within Paris which are known as lost parts of the Republic because government has a very loose control over them, and those parts are full of the Muslim immigrants. These people are not ready to follow the French laws, especially the law relating to secularism, the Laissez principle of the French system, right? They want to implement their own laws, right? And see the double standards. We'll see in Indian Express what some heads of states are saying about these attacks. Anyways, getting back to it. So on October 3, while unveiling the essence of the bill, which the government plans to formally present in December, President said the law was being brought in to fight Islamist separation, which is a conscious, theorized, politico-religious project that materializes through repeated deviations from the values of the Republic and which often result in creation of a counter society. Very important points. Pay attention, right? And we also saw how the Prime Minister said Islamofascism. It will crack down on foreign influence in French Muslim communities and allow the government to tackle funding for mosques from overseas. The government will also create a certificate program for imams and ban homeschooling. And I'm again telling you, this will happen throughout Europe. You just see. Now, what is the geopolitical angle? Now, if you remember, there was also a standoff between Turkey and Greece. Turkey is picking up fights everywhere. And in that standoff over the islands in the East Mediterranean, right? Turkey said that we have the right and he's just trying to flex his muscle, which he does not have. So France fully backed Cyprus and Greece, right? So they have been fighting. And then again in Libya, they have been supporting the opposing parties. And this person, Erdogan, he's also a very big destabilizer in the region. He's trying to pick up fights with everyone, be it India, be it France, be it US, anyone and everyone. Why? Just for political gains within his own country. But this won't last, right? He's trying to revive the Ottoman territory and the Ottoman Empire. So these people are living in some delusions. I don't know. So Turkey under Mr. Erdogan is trying to expand its influence to the erstwhile Ottoman territories. We have already discussed all of this. France has stood in its way. In Libya, where Turkey is backing the Tripoli-based government, France has supported the Tobruk-based parallel government and the military campaign of the renegade General Khalifa Haftar against Tripoli. Then in the Eastern Mediterranean, Turkey has launched a gas exploration mission. Again, it is just to pick up a fight, clashing with Greece and Cyprus, while France threw its weight behind the fellow EU members and even sent French warships to the region. Again, in the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, Turkey offered unconditional support to Azeri military offensive, while Mr. Macron slammed Ankara's reckless and dangerous intervention. And he's also sending Syrian terrorists to this region, Armenia, Azerbaijan, right? So this is the plan of Mr. Erdogan, and he has a new puppy called Imran Khan. So Imran Khan has multiple masters, China and now Turkey. All these cases, France and Turkey emerged as two opposing poles in West and the East respectively, while France, the EU's most powerful military, is trying to assert itself under Mr. Macron. Mr. Erdogan's neo-Ottoman foreign policy is ready to pick up fights wherever it sees an opening. So this is what it is, right? Then page number 14, business. Rupee slides as virus rattles, EU stocks fall. So basically rupee has hit a 2-month low of rupees 74.10 against a dollar. Why? Because of weak domestic equities and strong dollar amid global risk aversion. So what happens whenever there are problems in the global economy? People will pull out of emerging markets or foreign markets and reinvest their money in the home territory. So all the dollar that was coming in India, it is being pulled back by the investors because number one, there are again risks associated with fresh lockdowns in Europe, right? And then there is high uncertainty ahead of US elections and the dimming hopes of stimulus plan from the US administration. So whenever there are problems, people become less risk averse, right? So what they would do, they would take out money from foreign markets and reinvest it in their domestic market. This happens whenever you face a problem. Your home base is your most secure place. So this is also what happens in the international stock and international currency market. And how do we again determine the rate? Simply on demand and supply. Right now, dollar is high because there is more demand for dollar in international market because dollar is a more secure form of currency. That is why rupee is falling, right? Then US GDP grew 33%, recovery incomplete. So the US economy grew at a record of 33.1% annual rate in the July-September quarter, but has yet to fully rebound from the plunge in the first quarter. The third quarter growth showed that the nation had regained only about 2/3 of output lost early this year. Now this 33.1% is again because of low base. I have already explained what is the low base effect. So because of that base effect, they are experiencing such a record growth rate. It is growth rate, not absolute growth. Please learn to differentiate between the two, okay? Then Centre relaxes Air India sale terms yet again. So Centre is trying to sell Air India at any cost, but it is finding no takers for it. So it revised the bidding parameters for 100% stake sale in Air India, allowing private players to quote an enterprise value. So in this, what would happen? They would quote the value of the airlines along with the debt. Because whosoever buys the airline, he'll also have to take over the debt that is owed by this airline to different lenders. So that is why enterprise value. This is government's third effort to woo buyers. Bidders will be given 7 days to post queries on the new bidding parameters, after which they can submit their bids by November 14. And they have given date till December 28 for finalization of the bids. This is the 6th time since January that government has extended the deadline due to lack of interest from prospective buyers. Enterprise value shall mean the combined value of debt and equity of AI as assessed by bidder in its financial bid. So I've already told you what is enterprise value. This process would not change the valuation of the airline. So they are saying that we will not change the valuation of the airline, but just we are giving them more time and the principle of enterprise value. Now starting with the Indian Express. Front page, 3 killed in French church Islamist terror attack, Macron. So we've already discussed, right? Guard injured in attack at French consulate. Jeddah man with knife held in lion. So these people are crazy. Then key change in Air India disinvestment. Bidders can decide the debt burden level. So we've already discussed this, right? The new offer means that government will not predetermine the level of debt that AI will carry. It gives greater flexibility to structure bids and is a marked departure from earlier disinvestment plans. So rest we've already discussed, right? Then government set to name CIC to ICs despite opposition dissent moves. So I've already told you it is a panel of 3 members, right? First the DOPT shortlists the name and then the panel of 3 members comprising the Prime Minister of India, the Union Home Minister and the leader of the largest opposition party in Lok Sabha. They are part of this panel, right? And then a majority decision is taken. So that has been taken. Now, as expected, Congress will always give one dissent note when it comes to government decisions. So former Indian Service Officer and Information Commissioner Yashwardhan Kumar Sinha, he'll be the new CIC. Then page number 5, government nod to 10,000 crore project to strengthen dams. So this project is known as Dam Rehabilitation and Improvement Project, DRIP, Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 1 has already been carried out. Now they are extending it to Phase 2 and Phase 3. It will be over a period of 10 years with 2 phases and 5 years each. Now for 2 years, both the phases will be overlapping, right? Now this comprehensive rehabilitation of existing 736 dams across the country over a period of 10 years. Now why? Because these dams are old and they need to be strengthened, because if not, that could lead to accidents, right? A major chunk of financing for these projects will come from external agencies such as World Bank and AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, to be implemented in 2 phases. First phase of the program was started in 2012, right? When 223 dams were covered under this project. Almost 80% of these dams are over 25 years of age. So that is why there is a huge requirement for scientific approach for maintenance and operation of these dams at present. So this is about it. Then yesterday we discussed about the Arogya Setu Info RTI. So government will take action against those officials who denied Arogya Setu Info, right? Then India conveys concern over map in Saudi. We've already discussed. Now page 7, Telangana to assign geographical coordinates to land. So the states in South India, they are very good in terms of taking initiatives for governance. So Telangana government will soon undertake a survey to allot geographical coordinates, longitudes and latitudes to land to make them tamper proof, so that there are no problems when it comes to establishing ownership and other rights, right? Now there's a Dharani portal which has records of about 1.46 crore acres of land, and people can access them anytime with just a click. Now with the help of the Dharani portal, registrations and mutations can be done at the same time with minimum human interface. So when there's minimum human interface, there's minimum chance of bureaucratic red tapes and also of corruption. Then again, we've been discussing this data protection bill. So see the guts of Google. Now what happened in the US Senate hearing? The Senator Ted Cruz, he said that Google is probably the most powerful corporation in the world, and it is true. Now what Google is saying, it says that India should avoid data localization, and that actually riled some panel members. They were angry about their statements. So the tech giant told the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Personal Data Protection Bill that India should avoid data localization requirements, a submission which riled some panel members. So data localization, I've told you that whatever data is generated in India, it should be stored in the servers located within Indian territory, not abroad, right? Because when it is in the Indian territory, then Indian laws could be applied to those servers, and then we could protect the personal data. Right now, there is no concept because our data is going to US, right? And that data is governed by US laws. And same happens for the Chinese apps. Our data goes to China, and those data sets are being governed by the Chinese laws. And there's a 2017 Chinese legislation which says that every Chinese tech company has to share whatever data the Chinese government asks in the name of national security. So that is how they were doing such massive and sophisticated surveillance operations on different people, including the President and Prime Minister of India. Now, digital financial service platform Paytm too appeared before the panel. Paytm representatives were asked about the quantum of Chinese investment in the company, and they were very honest about it. They said it is 1/3, and they said that there should be data localization. They were candid about the 35% Chinese investment. Both Google and Paytm were asked about the recent Google Play Store controversy. We've already discussed that. Now, some committee members asked Google representatives about its control over mobile phone makers through the Android system, pointing out that it doesn't leave any choice for the user. We've all discussed this, right? Antitrust, anti-competitive cases on Google. But it was Google's submission that India should avoid data localization requirements, which it said are ill-suited to protecting privacy and security, that surprised them and riled some members. Google representatives were confronted by some members who asked whether the company believes India doesn't have the capacity to localize its data and cannot protect privacy and security of its citizens. Google representatives were asked whether it has taken this view specifically for India, and some members reminded them that the company is adhering to the US laws and is fighting legal battle with European Union. So many more battles to continue, and this data law is very, very important for India because I've told you 21st century the currency or the oil is data. Whosoever owns the data owns the world, right? So we should be protecting our own data. Then page number 11 explained panel for Delhi Air Roll Powers what's new. So we've already discussed it. We'll quickly look at it. So the commission, the ordinance say, will supersede bodies such as the central and state pollution control boards of Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, UP and Rajasthan, and will have the powers to issue directions to these state governments on issues pertaining to air pollution. Specifically, it is only for air pollution where its writ will be supreme, right? Now, EPCA was not a statutory body, I've already told you, but it drew legitimacy from the Supreme Court, which has been looking at cases of air pollution as part of judgment. I also told you about this Mehta judgment, 1988, right? This is the most pivotal judgment. EPCA was not, however, supported by a legal framework in the form of a law. It did have the authority to issue fines or directions and guidelines to the governments in other states. It had no state representatives, just 2 permanent members. The commission, on the other hand, will have representation from state. Now, what is the role of commission vis-a-vis state? State as well as central bodies will not have jurisdiction over matters related to air pollution because this body will be the supreme body when it comes to air pollution. The ordinance says that commission will look at coordination between states, planning and execution of policy, and interventions, operations of industry, inspection, research into causes of pollution, etc. So it has wide range of functions. Now, state governments have concerns, especially the Delhi government. You know, they are always in a tussle with the central government. So they say that this will erase the relevance of state pollution control boards since they do not have the powers to make any autonomous decisions anymore when it comes to air pollution. Now, in case of a direction issued by a state and the commission clash, the decisions of the commissions will be implemented. What are the challenges? According to the ordinance, the committee has been formed to do away with ad hoc measures and to replace them to streamline participation from states and experts. The commission has a large number of members from state government, which has not gone down well with the states. So this is the problem there. Now this one, in Pompeo's Indo-Pacific tour, a message to China, takeaways for India. So first he's telling that the recent Quad meeting and then the 2+2, the joint statement, India did not actually say anything averse to China directly. There were some indirect references to China in terms of rules-based international order, but did not take a pot shot at China directly. Then he says that all the 3 countries Pompeo visited, Sri Lanka, Maldives and Indonesia, are strategically vital to Chinese President Xi Jinping's BRI. China appears strongest in Sri Lanka, where it has control on the Hambantota port and is making a terminal at Colombo port and a new city off the Colombo seafront, and is involved in a slew of other infrastructure projects. And Mr. Gotabaya, he's coming very close to China and he's defending China. Now 3 visits, one theme that he's telling that China is lawless, it does not represent international laws and it traps countries. Now coming to individual countries, even before Pompeo's visit to Sri Lanka, Chinese embassy, basically it was making allegations against US that it is trying to interfere in China-Sri Lanka relations. Then President Gotabaya Rajapaksa refuted Pompeo's assertion that Sri Lanka was caught in a debt trap. He said that Beijing had provided crucial assistance to Colombo in the last 10 years while welcoming more American investment. So he's playing both sides. Then Maldives. Now Chinese Communist Party continues its lawless and threatening behavior and announced the opening of an embassy in Malé. So US is going to open an embassy in Malé. Earlier the US ambassador to Sri Lanka had concurrent charge of Maldives. Now a separate embassy. India, which has prevented US Maldives defense treaty back in 2013, welcomed the new agreement, saying that it was in line with India's interests in regional stability. Since 2018, when Ibrahim Soli became president, the country has scrapped an earlier tilt towards Beijing and has recast its foreign policy to reflect other long standing ties, including with India. There have been some voices in Maldives against striking too close a friendship with the US and India, and there were also talks that Indian soldiers are going to be stationed in Maldives, so that basically created a mini controversy, but that seems to be settled for now. Then Indonesia, in Jakarta, which is also the headquarters of ASEAN, some of whose members are faced with Chinese claims on their territory, the South China Sea conflict, right? Pompeo lauded both Indonesia and ASEAN for standing up to China. Then page number 14, the world, Ghus ke Mara, minister admits Pak role in Pulwama terror. So someone should tell them that Ghus ke Mara would be when Pakistani army has a direct war with India. They are in no position. They are a bunch of cowards. They will always use these terrorists to attack India. And those are not any sign of bravery. So these people are branded cowards. And they have been exposed time and again, right? Then see this. Now this is the problem. These leaders of Islamic world, they create problems for Islamic people. Muslims have a right to punish French Malaysia's Mahathir. So this is what he's saying. So now tell me, how can you, basically not say that there is Islamofascism in the world? Because these are the statements. And there was also a statement by someone that there is freedom of expression until and unless when it comes to Muslims. So these double standards, they cannot stand in this world. There will be a problem. Yes, there will be a problem, but it has to be solved and people have to modernize themselves, right? Then typhoon slams into Vietnam, 60 killed. So this typhoon is called Molave, right? Typhoon is nothing but a form of tropical cyclone. I've sort of given you an introduction earlier as well. It is a very technical topic, so we'll be discussing it separately some other time. Now as West stumbles, helmsman Xi pushes an ambitious plan. So they just keep on praising themselves in their own media. So we're really not interested. Then Amazon India writes to SEBI bosses, asked not to okay deal. So this is about the future retail Reliance deal, right? If you remember, we've discussed that future retail first last year in 2019, it sold 49% of its share in a 2000 crore deal to Amazon, right? Now it has sold off its retail business to Reliance. Now Amazon is resisting that and it has also dragged this deal into SIAC, right? And there was an emergency order to halt this deal. Now Amazon is asking SEBI to halt this and not okay this. Now what are Amazon's points of contention? Amazon said that that deal gave it a right to call option. That means Amazon had the right for the next 3 to 7 years to basically acquire more shares of the company. And number two, the company was obligated to inform Amazon of any new deal it was signing. So it said that Future Group did not honor both of those deals. So that is why it is resisting. But the real reason is Amazon is scared that Reliance could give it a run for its money in India. Then October-December 2019, urban joblessness eases, labor activity rises. So unemployment falls in 15 to 29 age group. As per the quarterly periodic labor force survey, urban joblessness, it fell down. But this data set differs from the annual report of periodic labor force survey released by MOSPI. So who releases this? MOSPI, which covers both rural and urban areas. So this is all about it that you need to know. Then NITI releases Draft Act rules for states on land titling. So this is about establishing clear land titles. Right now, this is just a draft. So we'll just quickly look at it. We'll not get into it. Let them come out with the legislation. Then we'll get into the details. So this draft model act and rules for states for regulation on conclusive land titling, providing for a state government to order establishment of title registration for all or any type of immovable property. So basically your land is your immovable property. Now clear titling is very, very important to basically avoid any types of disputes. And if the land is acquired by government, then there is clear ownership and land can give compensation accordingly. The move towards a land titling framework is aimed at reducing land related litigations and improved land acquisition for infrastructure projects. In a conclusive titling system, the government provides guaranteed titles for the land and compensation in case of any ownership disputes. The Draft Act provides that any person aggrieved by an entry in record of titles may file an objection before the title registration officer. So there will be an officer within 3 years from the date of such notification, following which the title registration officer makes an entry. So now these are the nitty-gritties of it. Right now we'll not get into it. Basically, what is the purpose? To establish clear ownership so that if there is land acquisition, number one, government can pay compensation, proper compensation, and number two, there are less litigations and problems. Then US GDP grows at 33.1% in Q3, we've already discussed. So folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos, and please give us a thumbs up if you liked our videos. Also, connect with us on our Instagram page, UPSC for Everyone, and please connect with us on our Telegram page where you can access the PDFs of the videos that I'll be posting daily, right? So see you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.